We continue to navigate through uncertain times. Our decisions must be concise and in the best interest of all. We cast no doubt on the health concerns related to coronavirus. However, we recognize the need to find a balance between addressing those concerns and protecting the livelihoods of those we have sworn to serve. Our decision today is not one of defiance. Rather, it is one of respect for those citizens and members of our business community whom we represent and who are counting on us to provide the leadership, trust, and confidence necessary to get East Peoria moving forward again. The East Peoria City Council stands united in its support of the Tri-County phased reopening plan presented to Governor Pritzker on April 29, 2020. As the elected leaders of the City of East Peoria, we are committed to reopening our community in a measured, reasonable approach and have therefore made the decision to begin implementing Phase 1 of the Tri-County phased reopening plan beginning May 1, 2020 within East Peoria corporate limits. The Tri-County phased reopening plan does not compel any business or any individual to reopen or to take any action, including any that might be contrary to the directives found in the Governor's Executive Order 2020-32. All are free to strictly abide by all aspects of the Governor's latest order, should they so choose. The implementation of the Tri-County phased reopening plan is a declaration by the Mayor that any business or any individual who takes steps towards reopening consistent with its guidelines, including those relating to precautionary health measures, for the particular phase that applies will have the full support of city government. Consequently, no city official, including police officers, will take any step to discourage anyone from reopening or taking any action consistent with the Tri-County phased reopening plan. The individuals or businesses that are licensed by the state must consult with respective licensing authority and, if they choose, their private legal counsel concerning the consequences of taking any action inconsistent with the Governor's latest order. Actions that are contrary to the Tri-County phased reopening plan are discouraged by the city, but formal enforcement measures will be taken only if authority to do so is made clear by decision of a court with jurisdiction over the city or by specific guidelines from the Tazewell County State's Attorney's Office. Remember, the Tri-County phased reopening plan includes timelines. It's subject to change depending on further developments, including receipt of updated medical data and guidelines from Tazewell County Health Department. We encourage our residents to exercise personal responsibility, to remain respectful, and to remain supportive as we seek to revitalize our economy. These are extraordinary times which require us to take necessary steps to protect public health while at the same time protecting the businesses that serve our community. Now, as what I've done, Jill will be handing out at the conclusion of this what that Phase 1 entails. Just a couple of other comments here. I know the media caught wind when there were 21 signatories that submitted this very same plan in support of this plan of the Governor. Go on record to say I've not heard back from the Governor as it states in this, and it's very clear, that's why I read it. The East Peoria City Council has made the decision to begin the implementation of this plan here in East Peoria. So we're speaking on behalf of East Peoria today, and that's effective beginning today. Aside from that, I know as we are in unprecedented times, there's differences of opinion, and as mayor, I've made it clear to our residents anyway to remain respectful. Everyone's going to have differences of opinion, and as what you're hearing today is people can do what we're asking here, but they're also free to do whatever they want. So should they choose to abide by the Governor's executive orders, that's completely up to them. So I would at this time open it up for any questions anyone might have.
John,
Yeah.
Have you talked at all with officials at the health department? You suggested that
Yes.
some of this might be subject to change based
Sure.
on other guidance from the county health department.
Sure.
Have you talked to them in advance about this, or
Yes, I actually,
to the initial proposal from the members?
sure. Yeah, so just so everyone understands the timeline of that, you know, and I just do a little backstory, not to regurgitate information, but, you know, I did have a personal conversation with Governor Pritzker, and the purpose behind me reaching out to him was we had been working on a plan here specific to East Peoria. And in the course of that conversation, I told him the plan could be something that could be applicable to the region. It's not just specific to us. He stated kind of what his position was, which he kept referring to this peak. And, you know, I respectfully disagreed. I don't think we're going to see a peak. Quite honestly, I think you're going to see a plateau. You know, this thing just didn't ramp up. You know, it grew, and then now you're going to see a plateau. I've tracked the numbers every single day, and they remain flat. And then as the testing increased, yes, positive tests increased, which everybody knew that. It's common sense. But is what you saw in that was the percentage of positives versus those tested actually decreased. I know he didn't agree with that, and it was very respectful. It was a great conversation. But in the course of that, as he was asking a couple of details out of that plan, what that would entail, he made it clear to me, and you'll see in phase one, restaurants and bars need to continue doing what they're doing today. That reopening of restaurants and bars I have listed in the second phase, which I'm not going to speak to today, and that's based on reduced occupancy, which I told him up front. So how did that lend itself to 21 of us signing on to that and sending it to the governor? So I sent that plan, to answer your question specifically, to Amy Fox at the Tazewell County Health Department. They have had executive committee conference calls as well as county conference calls on a regular basis, at least on this side of the river. So we've been on those calls. We've been very active, taking their guidelines and adhering to them and whatnot. I submitted this plan to her and asked for honest feedback. She didn't give it until yesterday, which is fine. I'm not beating her up. Listen. The health department, you need to understand, they have a job to do, and they are working extremely hard. This is new to everybody. So for that reason, I have the utmost respect for them. They're going to have their opinion, which is protecting public health and safety. Get it? And they do a phenomenal job. And I expressed this, Amy. I said, listen, if we move forward with this, it's no disrespect to you. But, you know, part of that conversation with the governor, and he made it clear to me, you know, listen, I got to look at the state as a whole. I understand that. Sir, I'm elected at this level, right? I mean, my oath of office is at this level. So, you know, as we talk about the health concerns related to coronavirus, nobody's talking about the flip side of it. Everybody recognizes there's an issue with the economy, and it's been devastating. Nobody is talking about it. Nobody's doing anything about it. And I told him I would just appreciate working with him, if all possible, at a regional level. Let's try it. Let's try it. And if it doesn't work, so that lends itself to Mayor Ardis's comments. Well, there's no scientific metrics involved. I don't know where that came from. I'm not slighting Mayor Ardis, but he didn't give any input whatsoever until he sent the media that email that went to us directly before I submitted this to the governor, which is fine. This isn't a tit for tat.
The question, though, what was Tazewell County Health Department's response to you? Because you said that you would abide by their guidance.
Well, I said we are adhering to the guidelines that they I mean, everything from sanitation to, you know, washing your hands, things of that sort.
Oh, okay. So
yeah, they're not, their job isn't to,
if they told you that they thought this was an ill-advised maneuver that would cause more problems,
sure,
you would not be inclined to change it because of that.
Sure. Well, listen, at the end of the day, they're going to have their concerns no matter the timing, who does what. I mean, and let's face it, I don't blame them. You know, that's their job to focus on that aspect of it. I'm not speaking for Amy Fox. She didn't give me her blessing, so don't misunderstand here. I'm speaking on.
What was their response to you about
Basically, she felt that there will be a plan forthcoming, didn't know a timeline, didn't know what that was going to look like from the state level on a reopening. And she said, listen, is all I can do, what she did. She sent me an email outlining kind of what they would like to see businesses do from sanitation, just to give you some examples, and I don't want to read it verbatim, or I don't know everything, but give you an example. Her concern was, businesses that have been shut down for quite some time, let's say they're allowed to reopen, okay? They meet all the criteria and they reopen, and they make the decision to reopen. I can't stress that enough. This is a decision these business owners get to make on their own. So her concern was, for example, the restrooms. Are they going to have enough paper towels, enough toilet paper, enough hand sanitizer, things of that they're going to recommend that these businesses do. So I vowed to her, I'm going to continue as we go through this, and this is what I want to stress. We're going to continue working with them and communicating with them on a daily basis. I think that is important. I don't want people to misunderstand here. We're not doubting or discounting anything to do with health-related issues with the coronavirus. That being said, go back to the conversation with the governor, which is, I understand he's the governor of Illinois, okay? So it's a difficult thing to separate Chicago. I know that's what people want to do. I get it. So I've been very respectful of the decisions made to date. Not that I necessarily agree with him, but I want to be respectful. I mean, he's in a tough spot, no different than all of us are. So with that being said, we talked about the numbers down here compared to other regions. And he asked if I knew where the testing facilities were, and I said yes, and I told him. And we got into the discussion about the testing percentages or whatever. But at the end of the day, I think it's the right thing to do. We cannot, here's where we're at. I don't, from an elected official standpoint, and there's no politicking here, and I express that to the governor. I mean, there's not a single person that's been critical or what have you of anything. So there's no politics involved in what we're doing today. Is what we're trying to do is find that healthy balance and protect the businesses. There are so many small businesses that are deemed non-essential. And I'll be honest with you, personal opinion here, the essential versus non-essential is very subjective. What's essential to me may not be essential to somebody else. And I really struggle with what I see with the businesses divided up. This one can be open, but this one cannot. So our interest here is to protect all of them and treat them fairly. I think they have every right. And listen, people don't have to go into these stores. But I do. This is why you're going to get a printed copy of what I announced here today, so it's clearly written, and that message is clear when it goes out.
But Mayor, it's rare that we see, if this ever happened, a governor, a city mayor, and the county health department sort of conflict when it comes to public health messages. What do you tell citizens who are confused of who to follow? It seems like usually you kind of trust all three usually. Now they're all different messages. So what should people do when they're being told almost two different, maybe three different things?
It goes into what people think is right for them to do. That's where I'm at. I'm a veteran, and the Marine in me, I served in combat. And there's a thing called the Constitution. I'm not going to travel down that path on this because this is new to everybody. And I've said that from day one. I mean, when we first started making decisions at the city level, we've made some very difficult decisions, as has the governor, and it's new to the public health departments. So everyone's trying to scramble. I know he's talking about this modeling, which he hasn't really released what that is. I don't know what that is. And I'm not discounting it, but I can't speak to that. What I can speak to is what is here at the local level. And that's what we're basing our decision off of. And it's no disrespect to anybody else. But I do feel like, people should have a personal choice as to whether they're going to go to that store, not go to that store. But with this approach, it's a very measured approach. And listen, I absolutely agree that you cannot just flip a switch and let everything go full bore. That's not going to work. I mean, because clearly there's a virus, and I suspect it's been here way longer than it was first diagnosed. And I know the governor talks about the borders. He did talk about that again in that discussion. And I get the border thing. It also doesn't have a deadline. And we keep looking at the peak, and when you look at the executive order, he thought that peak, and honestly, I'm not beating him up, nobody knows. He thought it was going to come mid-April. So he extended the, stay-at-home order out till April 30th. And then what happens? Here we are, May 1 and no peak. So now you read the executive order that he issued last night, and it simply says peak in May. Nobody knows. But at the end of the day, we've got to start moving forward.
Well, Mayor Paul, for a while now, top researchers, health experts have been on the daily briefings, talking to everybody here in the state, telling them that reopening, maybe even at this rate, could cause a spike in COVID-19 cases. Now, say a spike happened here in East Peoria. Are you afraid that that could happen? And if so, would you take the blame if things started to get a little more, people started to get more sick down here because you were allowing people to go into the stores?
Well, listen, at the end of the day, let's keep in mind, too, these businesses, they have the right to restrict you from coming in or out. They have the right not to open. They should, and you'll see in the plan, adhere to the social distancing guidelines. Mask, for example, effective today. You're supposed to wear a mask unless medically you can't, or however it's worded. Businesses have every right. For me to sit here today and say, we're not enforcing that, East Peoria is not enforcing that, that doesn't mean a business is not enforcing that. So people need to be respectful, and that's why I keep talking about respect. So to answer whether or not, I'm listening to everything that everybody is saying. But at the end of the day, one thing I'm not is blinded by fear. And this thing is not just going to just go away magically one day. I mean, we have got to find some normalcy and get things back on track. And we can't control that. So,
what would it take for you to rid the city of this reopening phase plan?
well, and this is something that I talked to the health department, and when you read even the beginning, the first paragraph, which you'll get a copy of it, it was released because it was submitted to the governor, but there are certain things, including timelines, that are subject to change. If you look at how this plan was drafted, keep in mind the health experts kept saying this is a 14-day incubation period, okay? Read the plan. I mean, it's based off of that 14-day model, and now they're saying, well, we're not quite sure if that's, nobody knows. So we can't sit around and keep waiting for those answers. I mean, people's livelihoods are being destroyed. I mean, look at the numbers, 818,000 people filed for unemployment in less than 6 weeks. Businesses have gone under. I'm not discounting it. I'm trying to find a healthy balance, and I think with this approach, by doing a slow reopening and allowing people to make their decisions, is the right approach. And I think it's doable. Now, if you see a major spike, and that's something that we'll continue to monitor with the health department, there's nothing to say that we wouldn't pull back.
John, what convinced you that the 15 days between steps is the right one? And I guess why I'm asking is that the guidance the White House committee put out suggested ensuring that there is a decline over 14 days between each new step, and I'm not entirely certain how it is that, from day 1 through day 14, we may not, if there's a 14-day period between cases, folks on day 1 may not start to show until day 14 before this next step would take effect, and restaurants open and so on all the way through July 1st in your plan. Why not more time? Why just the 14 days between?
And it's clear it's subject to change. The first phase is 14 days. We'll see where, and this is something I expressed to Amy Fox, it's something that we can monitor as they do every day. We get the data from the local hospitals. So the stuff's posted, you all get it every day, no different than we do. So that is subject to change. When I put this out there to get feelers and feedback, the people that signed off, didn't want to change anything. They were comfortable with it. You know, we're 40 or 41 days into this. And to me, is what really prompted to get things restarted is, what was the plan? Is it indefinite? We just stand still and we continue to watch livelihoods ruined and businesses go under and people restricted and, you know, oh, we'll extend that restriction. I'm not discounting it. The decisions made to date, I'm comfortable with. I've been very supportive of it. Today's a new day, and I think we're going to give this a try. It's something that we've all supported here in East Peoria, and I'm comfortable with it.
What metric is it that you're really going to be looking at then to make your decision? Because I sense that there will be some
Sure.
sort of, you know, not necessarily scientific, none of us up here have lab coats.
I'm not a scientist, but I did sleep at a Holiday Inn Express last night.
Data is it that you're looking at? Is it new cases?
It is the data.
Is it?
Yeah, it's the data posted daily. You know, give you an example here, and I'm not trying to, you know, discount any numbers because one death is terrible, and I'm sure the people that, you know, the family members or whatever would agree with that. But, you know, in this Tri-County region, you're looking at 361,000 people. We've had 143 positive cases out of 361,000 people. And we've been doing this, and people have been moving around, and the box stores, the Walmarts and the grocery stores are open, and you've seen more people in there because other places are closed, and we're still at 143 cases. I'm not discounting it, but this is why I'm saying let's move in a different direction. If all of a sudden those 143 jump up, you know, 50 or 100 a day, then we have a problem. But we're 40 days into it, and we have 143. So, I mean, to me, it'd be simple math. If the hospitals are all of a sudden inundated with people in this region, then we know, hey, this isn't working.
John Kahl, do you think that laxing restrictions at this rate will cause your residents to take a more lax approach in other areas when it comes to social distancing gathering? They say, okay, well, we can go in the stores now. How about we can have a house party now? How about we can have a picnic and, you know, and then what?
Listen, there's personal responsibility. People can do that now if they want. So that's not on us if we do things. If you look in this phase, I mean, there's a lot of things, and I explained this to the governor, that we continue to support as part of a soft ramp-up reopening, if you will. You know, not that everyone's going to agree with everything in there, and I get that, but at the end of the day, it's going to come down to personal responsibility. Everyone needs to be responsible for themselves and do the right thing. You know, I mean, to me, the answer isn't the government dictating what you should and shouldn't be doing. I mean, people have a personal responsibility to do the right thing.
So you said that the police are not enforcing, you know, certain things for businesses. If you're opening, are they still enforcing that? Are they still going to shut down gatherings, or how does that work?
Well, let me tell you, here in East Peoria, and I don't want to jinx us, so you may have just jinxed us, but anyway, we've had one issue where our police were called down to the riverfront by the Embassy Suites, and it was a group of younger gentlemen that had sports cars and stuff, and it was a big parking lot, so they thought, oh, no big deal, we'll be spread out enough and not an issue. Our police department went down there, and they've been given clear directives in that we are not the police that go out and arrest people for violating an order. When you read that announcement in writing, you will see it clearly states, we do not have the legal authority to arrest people for violating an order. I can't stress that enough. So it's been very clear to our police officers, that's not our job. And you're not going to be that guy or woman or whoever. We're not that type of a community. People have been very respectful in this entire region, honestly, I think. I mean, I can't really speak for other mayors, but I can speak for East Peoria. We've not had any issues. And when the police showed up, those gentlemen dispersed. There was no issue. Nobody got arrested for disorderly conduct or disobeying a lawful order to, you know, split up or whatever. But, you know, at the end of the day, I can't stress that enough. I know there's a lot of talk in the media right now. You're hearing from state's attorneys from other counties, right, saying this is our position. You're not going to get that from Tazewell County, but it's pretty clear that if you break the law, you can be charged at that time. An order is not the law. I mean, you can enforce it, but we're not enforcing it because that's not our position. I mean, it's not our job.
You
You
had noticed
said
that
they
the
won't
state
be
police involved-
arrested, but are there any consequences at all? And if not, don't you think that'll make people be more inept to actually break the law or order, the rules? Because
Listen.
there are no consequences?
Listen, I mean, the law is clear. I don't make the law. Neither does the governor. The law is clear. This is an executive order. So I think that's why you're seeing so many people question, what does that mean? I mean, we're in uncharted territory here. So is the governor. And I understand. I think his intentions, I would hope, are sincere, and this is why he's doing it. He has to speak to that. But at the end of the day, it's an order. So, law enforcement can't arrest someone for violating an order. They can arrest someone for violating the law, and the state's attorney can charge for that.
No, I understand arrest. I'm sorry, I just wanted to know
Yeah.
consequences in general. Are you saying there are no consequences whatsoever?
Listen, that's not up for. I'm not a judge and a jury. I mean, that's not up for me to decide. People have a personal responsibility. I would like to think that people do the right thing. They've done the right thing for 40 days, and now in my humble opinion, they have every right to do what we're encouraging them or allowing them to do here in East Peoria. And that's, at the end of the day, that's going to be up to them.
In your conversation with the governor, did he say or imply that he might use the Illinois State Police to come in and enforce in East Peoria like he did with Pekin Country Club?
No, I didn't personally talk to the governor about any type of enforcement whatsoever. It was not part of the conversation.
You mentioned Tri-County, but just for clarification, this is just the city of East.
This is just, so making that clear, and you'll see in here, that was the plan name that I submitted to the governor. That's what we're beginning implementation, keep having trouble with that word today, here in East Peoria. But that's very specific to East Peoria, yes.
Have you talked to any of the businesses in East Peoria that have been closed till this point due to, and I mean, are there any that are going to say now that this has been implemented here in East Peoria, we're going to open today? I mean, are there any businesses that have done that?
We're implementing this first phase today, so I mean, they'll have to, I wasn't going to read it for you because you're going to get a copy of it, but didn't want to take up your time reading through it. But it also coincides with the language that's included in the announcement. So businesses, I mean, that is going to be on them to, whether or not they're state license holders. It clearly states in there you're going to have to check with your state license authority. But the social distancing, all those guidelines are pretty clear. I don't think there's any business that doesn't understand that after 40 days of being told this is what we expect, this is what we ask. So hopefully that answers your question.
A few days ago, there was a parade involving a large group of high school students, similar gathering to what you saw on the riverfront, a lot of people together. But from what we heard, the police weren't called. Is there a reason why they weren't called in that certain situation versus what on the riverfront? Sort of what, going forward, what will police respond to when it comes to these larger gatherings that you might see?
So obviously everything's complaint driven. I don't know anything about that. Where was that at? Here in East
I
Peoria?
just got a text from the manager. I'm not sure where it was.
Oh.
But there was a large parade a few days ago.
I don't know anything about that. I don't think that happened in East Peoria. I'm not aware of it anyway, if it did. But, complaint driven. So our police, and they've responded, when this first started, a lot of people were complaining on each other. And I try to encourage people, don't do that. Listen, everyone's going to handle things differently. It goes back into personal responsibility. The government doesn't need to tell you what you should and shouldn't be doing. I mean, that's something that, you need to make your own decision on. But at the end of the day, the few complaints I know that our police have shown up, people have been very respectful. The officer just says, hey, listen, it's not recommended, that 15 of you are gathered here, would you mind dispersing? Everybody's complied.
It was at the high school parking lot, I'm not sure.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I'm not, you familiar with that? I've not heard anything of that. Yeah.
Yeah, large gathering there, I guess, of students.
Huh. Yeah, I'm not familiar with that. But you know, we encourage, and it's listed in here, and we'll keep stressing that as we make our announcements here at the local level with East Peoria residents. But you know, we're going to stress that people need to remain respectful. I mean, they really do. I mean, that's how we're going to get through this. But at the end of the day, we're finding that healthy balance here, and that's what's needed. So.
One last
Yes, ma'am.
question. Can you tell me how the canceling of the red, white, and boom, or what that means to East Peoria?
Yeah, so that's, thank you for bringing that up, by the way. I wasn't included on the call yesterday only because I was tied up in another conference call. I think Rick took one for the team on that. Mike Wild, he had reached out to Mayor Artis and myself and Rick and Pat Urick, I don't know, a week and a half ago. And just saying, hey guys, look, I'm seeing on the news that you guys have these budget cuts, and I mean, this is obviously not expected, right? And the financial impact to every municipality is devastating. Don't misunderstand that. It's truly devastating. So I had released some numbers. Pat Urick had released some numbers. So Mike thought it would be best if we had a conference call, which we did. And I spoke to him honestly about my position, which was on Tuesday night, I was going to make a public statement telling people we're going to have a $5.4 million shortfall due to lost revenue. So from our perspective, that included hiring freeze, salary freeze, concessions from the bargaining units, and layoffs. And I said, I cannot in good faith spend one dime or support any type of event, 4th of July. I can't do that. Not to mention, I think it's pretty clear, there's going to be no gathering of that size 4th of July, I doubt, anywhere, to be honest with you. And talk about timelines changing. So how that was left was, well, they needed to order fireworks by April 30th, I believe, is what he told us. So he said, I'll check back in yesterday. I think Rick was on there along with Peoria. And they talked about possibly moving it out.
Moving somewhere into the fall, but we'll have to discuss that as time goes on.
Yeah.
And again.
And that's how it was left.
Yeah, given all the situations, and there will not be a gathering. We have road construction, we have all kinds of other issues going on there. So the 4th was going to be a real task to do anyway. But
At least on the East Peoria side.
On East Peoria side,
Yeah.
true, and the bridge being closed. And again, adhering to what the governor, large gatherings. I mean, you're talking 100,000 people plus probably there.
Right.
So it wouldn't be safe. So again,
No, and East Peoria had already planned on, in conjunction with the IDOT, we had a PUETS project that we had committed to. We're moving forward with it. IDOT allowed us to move that project to July 6th. But we had to have it completed in conjunction with the reopening of the bridge. So our project's along river down there by Hucks and Cadova and all that. So we're going to have that blocked off July 6th, all the way butting up to the deadline of the bridge reopening. So we have our own project going on, and that area was already restricted. So I was honest with Mike, and I said, from East Peoria's perspective, I don't see it doable, even if we push it to fall, but that's not our decision to make. I was simply, you know, from the East Peoria standpoint, we would not be in a position where we could host anything on this side of the river. But, you know, we left it open for discussion, seeing how things work out here in the next few months.
Would you be a little more open to it if it is pushed back to say September, October time?
If our construction's done, and if we find a way to find $5.4 million before then, because we have people laid off. I mean, I cannot justify, I would never even think about justifying spending money on, and I'm not sliding it. As a veteran, I love 4th of July and, you know, celebrating our country, but at the end of the day, I mean, I don't see us being back on track that quickly. We've actually projected it's going to take an entire fiscal year to get back on track. So, but we did leave it open because you never know. Crazier things have happened.
And other cities that are part of this and signed the original letter, are they also planning to do a similar rollout? Obviously, you can't speak for them, but
Yeah.
other cities discuss with you about planning to do a similar thing?
I'm not sure, honestly. We've not had that discussion. You know, I've been in discussions with a couple of the mayors that were on there, the sheriff, of course, County Board Chairman Zimmerman. They're supportive of this. They knew that we're going to move forward today. So, and they were supportive of doing that as well. So, but I can't speak for the other mayors. I know Mayor Luft and I had a conversation last night, and I told him I was pretty confident that we're going to implement this beginning today. And I can't speak for them. I mean, I just shared with all of them this morning that this announcement was coming and we're moving forward, just to make them aware of it. And if they wanted to reach out and have questions or anything of that sort or additional dialogue, I'd be welcome to do that with them, but don't know.
Are you the first city in the state to do something like this? How does this compare to?
We're about to find out. I honestly don't know. And that's not our goal here, folks. No one's here to say, hey, let's, like I said, there's no politics involved. You know, we swore an oath, right, to the people that elected us. And that's what this is about today. We have got to move forward. We've got to reopen things, get people back to work, get businesses back on track, get the city back on track. You know, we had to lay off some public safety people. That was painful. But we had no choice. You know, we backed out all the capital for the entire year, took the debt out, and then we went back to every department, and these people worked their tail off in a short period of time to revise a budget, and that was a 15% reduction. And it came down to bare bone essential services. And when we're down to there was nothing left but to start laying people off. So these are difficult times, and we can't sit around for another 30 days hoping somebody else comes up with a plan and says, you have our blessing to move forward. We're going to take initiative. That's what Marines do. So,
John, I know that Jill is going to hand out the full copy of everything, but
Mhm.
you know, just we're all able to
sure.
record. Can you give us some of the highlights on this? I know that it's salons, it's
So
gyms, and all that within limited guidelines.
right.
But,
Well, it's
some of the
interesting too because, you know, salons, barbershops, spas, dog grooming facilities, other personal care facilities may reopen but shall take appropriate mitigation measures such as reconfiguring and or restricting space to enable people to be located apart, to ensure that social distancing guidelines are maintained. In addition, employees and patrons shall be required to use face masks while in close proximity to each other. Employees must clean and wipe surfaces between clients. Keep in mind, they probably are state licensed facilities, businesses. That's why you'll see that language in the announcement that, listen, we're open for you opening. We encourage it. At the end of the day, you need to get the blessing. And I suspect, and this is something that I did talk to Amy about specifically, was, you know, spas and salons. There was a gentleman, and I don't want to mention his name because I guided him towards the health department, but he had some ideas. He's supposedly been working on with salons on what that would look like to reopen and make sure all these measures are in place, whether that's, you know, covering the equipment and sanitizing and all that. This is where the health department's really going to have to come into play and be a good partner to work with. And the businesses need to be aware of that. Use them for a tool. You know, I encourage any business that we're allowing to reopen, reach out. I mean, that's what they're there for. They're there to help you. They're not there to hinder you or do anything to, you know.
and
yeah.
other businesses that are not essential, mom and pop, small business shops.
Yeah, and I did use the term non-essential, even though I take exception to that. And I'm very clear on that. I really have a hard time with that because I don't think it's fair to people that are deemed non-essential by a government. They're all essential. They wouldn't be in business if they weren't. Somebody's utilizing those products or those services for some reason. So it's essential to some people. But yeah, and it's clearly, as I listed some of these, you know, it says not, where's it at? But are not limited to. So outside of the restaurants, the bakeries and the bars, which, you know, for the first 2 weeks. I didn't even have in the equation there to continue the curbside, the carry out, or the delivery. You know, and then 2 weeks out as we look into this, and like I said, the timelines are subject to change. We have them ramping up at a reduced occupancy. But that's subject to, everything's subject to change here, but we gotta get moving in the right direction, so.
Are your calls with Paradise? I imagine they're under a different call.
They are, and it's laid out in the overall plan that the gaming board has full authority over any type of casino or video gaming operations. And then of course they just made an announcement yesterday that they're suspending, you know, operations until further notice. So it is clearly laid out. If you fall under their authority, they tell you when you can and can't. But I do know Boyd, prior to all of this being closed, they were already working on their own, I don't want to speak for them, but internal plan on how they would operate, you know, to prevent certain things. And I don't know where they're at today. But, you know, hopefully you see businesses start to reopen. I mean, that's the goal here. Anything else? Well, thank you all for your time. Thank you for being here. If you have any follow-up questions, Jill will hand out a copy of the announcement as well as the phase one. Please feel free to reach out anytime.